Subcortical vascular dementia is a form of cognitive decline that many families have never heard of, yet it affects far more older adults than most people realize. When I first began learning about this condition, one fact stood out immediately. A large portion of vascular-related cognitive problems are linked not to the outer surface of the brain, but to its deeper systems, the areas responsible for movement, speed of thinking, motivation, and emotional balance. What makes this especially important is that this type of cognitive change often goes unnoticed for a long time. Not because people don't care, but because the earliest signals don't look like memory problems at all. Instead, the body gives quieter signs, slower movements, subtle changes in behavior, small shifts in thinking speed that are easy to explain away as just getting older. And that's where many families lose valuable time. Subcortical vascular dementia develops when very small blood vessels deep inside the brain no longer function as they should. These vessels are thinner than a strand of hair, yet they deliver oxygen and nutrients to areas that control how quickly we think, how smoothly we move, and how well different parts of the brain communicate with one another. When these vessels are affected, the brain doesn't stop working overnight. It slows down, gradually, quietly, and often invisibly at first. What surprised me most is this. Many of the earliest signs don't feel cognitive at all. Changes in walking, emotional control, or bladder habits rarely make people think about brain health. Yet in many cases, these changes appear months, sometimes even years, before clear thinking problems become obvious. That's why awareness matters. In this video, I want to share 8 early signs of subcortical vascular dementia that adults over 65 and their families should be aware of. One of these signs, especially number 5, is so commonly overlooked that people often search for answers in the wrong places for years. Before we continue, I want to be very clear about something. This video is for education and awareness only. These signs do not confirm anything by themselves. If you notice several of them appearing together, that is a signal to speak with a qualified medical professional who can evaluate the situation properly. Early evaluation can make a meaningful difference. Now let's begin with a sign that often appears earlier than most people expect. Sign number 8. A noticeable slowing of thinking speed. One of the earliest and most consistent signals of subcortical vascular dementia is a gradual slowing in how quickly the brain processes information. This is not about forgetting facts, and it's not about confusion. It's about speed. You may notice that someone takes longer to respond to questions, even simple ones. There may be a pause before answering, as if the thought is there, but it takes extra time to come forward. Decision-making becomes slower. Choosing what to eat, what to wear, or what to do next may suddenly require much more effort than before. Conversations that move quickly can become difficult to follow. The person may ask others to repeat themselves or slow down. Tasks that once felt automatic now require more time and concentration. This happens because thinking speed depends on the brain's internal communication system, the white matter pathways that connect different regions. These pathways act like highways, allowing information to move quickly from one area to another. When small blood vessels deep in the brain are affected, these communication routes become less efficient. Signals still travel, but more slowly. The important thing to understand is this. The brain areas themselves may still work well. The challenge is how efficiently they communicate. That's why someone may still know the answer, but struggle to access it quickly. The information isn't lost, it's delayed. What makes this sign especially important is that thinking speed affects everything else. Memory, attention, language, problem solving. All of these rely on how quickly the brain processes information. So when speed slows down, many abilities appear weaker, even though the knowledge itself is still there. If you notice a consistent, progressive slowing in how quickly someone thinks, responds, or makes decisions, especially if this is a clear change from their usual way of functioning, this is something worth taking seriously. Thinking speed can be measured through proper cognitive testing, which helps professionals understand what may be happening beneath the surface. And this brings us to the next sign, one that often follows closely behind. After thinking speed begins to slow, another change often appears. difficulty with planning, organizing, and carrying out multi-step activities. This is not about occasionally forgetting an appointment or misplacing an item. It's about a deeper shift in how the brain manages complexity. You may notice that someone who once handled household responsibilities with ease now struggles to organize bills, manage finances, or keep track of schedules. Tasks that require several steps become confusing. Even familiar routines may feel overwhelming. Cooking a meal that involves timing multiple dishes becomes difficult. Following a recipe feels frustrating. Planning a small outing or coordinating simple errands suddenly takes far more effort than it used to. What's important to understand is that memory may still be fairly intact. The person often knows what needs to be done, but cannot figure out how to organize the steps or carry them out in the right order. This happens because planning and organization rely on communication between the front parts of the brain and deeper control centers underneath. These systems work together to turn ideas into action. When the connections between them slow down or weaken, the brain may still form plans, but struggles to execute them smoothly. That's why someone may say, "I know what I want to do, but I just can't get started." Or, "I can't seem to put it all together." This change directly affects independence. Managing medications, preparing meals, handling paperwork, and organizing daily life all depend on these executive skills. If you notice growing difficulty with tasks that require planning or sequencing, especially tasks the person handled easily in the past, it's helpful to pay attention to specific examples. These details can be very useful during a professional evaluation. Sign number 6, changes in walking and movement. One of the most distinctive and often overlooked of signs of subcortical vascular dementia involves changes in movement, especially walking. These changes are not simply stiffness, joint pain, or general weakness. They follow a specific pattern linked to deeper brain systems. Walking may become slower. Steps may shorten. Feet may not lift as high as before, creating a shuffling pattern. Turning can become difficult, requiring several small steps instead of a smooth movement. Balance may feel less stable, particularly when changing direction or navigating obstacles. Some people appear as though their feet hesitate or feel stuck when they first begin walking. These changes occur because deep brain structures play a key role in initiating and coordinating movement. When communication in these systems becomes less efficient, movement loses its smoothness and rhythm. What makes this sign especially important is timing. In many cases, walking changes appear before clear thinking problems are noticed, and they matter for another reason: safety. Shuffling steps, shorter strides, and difficulty turning all increase the risk of falls. Falls can lead to serious complications that greatly affect quality of life. If you notice walking changes that seem out of proportion to joint problems or muscle strength, especially if they are gradually progressing, this is something worth discussing with a professional who can evaluate movement patterns more closely. Sign number 5, urinary urgency without clear bladder causes. This is the sign that surprises many families the most. Urinary urgency, feeling a sudden, intense need to use the bathroom, can appear early in subcortical vascular dementia, even when no clear bladder issue is found. Tests may show no infection, no structural bladder problems. Yet the urgency persists. This happens because bladder control is not just a physical process, it's also regulated by brain circuits. The front of the brain helps delay bladder signals until the right moment. Deeper brain structures help regulate the reflex itself. When these communication pathways weaken, the brain may struggle to control urgency signals effectively. The result can be sudden urges, frequent trips to the bathroom, or occasional accidents, even though the bladder itself is functioning normally. What makes this sign so often missed is that it's usually treated as a separate issue. Many people assume it's simply part of aging and never connect it to brain function. But when urinary urgency appears alongside changes in thinking speed, movement, or organization, it may be part of a larger pattern. If this type of urinary change develops without a clear explanation, especially when combined with other signs we're discussing, it may be appropriate to ask whether a neurological evaluation could be helpful. Another early and often misunderstood sign involves changes in emotion and personality. Families frequently notice that something feels different, even if they can't immediately explain why. The most common change is apathy, a noticeable loss of motivation and emotional engagement. This is not the same as feeling sad. It's more like emotional flatness. The person may lose interest in activities they once enjoyed. Hobbies fall away. Social interactions feel like effort. Even daily routines may require encouragement. Emotional responses can become muted. Events that would normally spark excitement, concern, or joy may receive little reaction. Facial expressions become less animated. Speech may sound more monotone. What's important to understand is that this is not laziness, and it's not simply a mood issue. Motivation and emotional drive depend on deep brain circuits that connect emotional centers with planning and action systems. When these pathways slow down or weaken, the spark that initiates action fades. This is why apathy and subcortical vascular dementia often looks different from depression. In depression, people feel distressed by their lack of interest. With apathy, there is often indifference rather than sadness. Other emotional changes may appear as well. Some people become more irritable. Others experience sudden shifts in emotion that seem out of proportion to the situation. Some lose social sensitivity and say things without filtering as carefully as before. These changes can be confusing and painful for families, especially when they seem out of character. If you notice growing emotional flatness, reduced motivation, or personality shifts that don't align with someone's lifelong temperament, this may be another signal worth paying attention to, especially when combined with other signs. Sign number 3, difficulty maintaining attention and concentration. Attention and concentration often become affected early in subcortical vascular dementia, and this change quietly impacts nearly every aspect of daily life. This is not occasional distraction. It's a consistent struggle to stay focused. The person may have trouble following conversations, especially in busy environments. Background noise becomes overwhelming. Reading becomes difficult because the mind drifts and loses track of the storyline. Multitasking becomes nearly impossible. Trying to listen while doing something else may lead to confusion or frustration. This happens because attention relies on filtering systems deep within the brain. These systems help decide what information matters and what can be ignored. When these filters become less efficient, too much information competes for attention at once. The brain becomes overloaded. As a result, the person may seem forgetful, not because memory is failing, but because attention isn't strong enough to fully take in information in the first place. This distinction matters. Someone may struggle on memory tasks simply because they couldn't focus long enough to absorb the details. The information never had a chance to settle. What makes attention changes particularly challenging is their effect on daily activities. Conversations feel tiring. Reading feels frustrating. Even watching television can become difficult when focus drifts every few minutes. If you notice increasing difficulty with sustained attention, filtering distractions, or concentrating on tasks that once felt easy, this is another piece of the pattern. Attention can be evaluated through structured cognitive testing, which helps clarify whether this difficulty is part of a broader neurological change. Another sign that often develops gradually involves changes in speech, not in what a person says, but in how speech is produced. In subcortical vascular dementia, language itself usually remains intact. Vocabulary, grammar, and understanding are often preserved. The challenge lies in the physical coordination of speech. Speech may become slower. Pauses between words increase. Sentences take longer to complete. Some people notice that their voice becomes quieter, flatter, or less expressive. Words may sound slightly slurred or less distinct, especially consonants. Others may comment that the person is harder to hear or understand than before. This happens because speaking clearly requires precise coordination between breathing, the vocal cords, the tongue, and facial muscles. These movements are guided by deep brain systems that help regulate timing and smoothness. When these systems slow down, speech loses its natural rhythm. What makes this sign particularly useful for understanding what's happening is that the message remains clear. The person knows exactly what they want to say. The difficulty is purely mechanical. This pattern is different from conditions that affect language centers directly. It points instead to changes in motor coordination deep within the brain. If speech becomes progressively slower, softer, or less clear, especially when paired with movement changes or slowed thinking, It's worth mentioning this during a professional evaluation. Speech patterns provide valuable clues about how different brain systems are functioning. Sign number 1, difficulty with complex tasks while simple abilities remain strong. Perhaps the most characteristic pattern in subcortical vascular dementia is the growing gap between simple and complex abilities. Simple familiar tasks often remain fairly strong. Complex tasks become increasingly difficult. Someone may still manage basic routines with little trouble, yet struggle when multiple steps are involved. They may follow a single instruction easily, but become confused by multi-step directions. Simple calculations may be fine, while more involved problem-solving feels overwhelming. Familiar habits stay intact, but anything new or flexible becomes challenging. This happens because deep brain systems do not perform thinking tasks themselves. Instead, they help coordinate communication between different thinking areas. When those connections slow down, each area may still work on its own, but cooperation between areas becomes inefficient. As a result, tasks that rely on one mental function remain accessible, while tasks requiring integration across multiple functions begin to break down. This pattern differs from other types of cognitive decline, where even simple abilities gradually weaken. Here, the imbalance itself is the clue. If you notice someone handling everyday basics reasonably well, yet struggling disproportionately with anything complex or unfamiliar, this pattern deserves careful attention. What to do next? If you recognize several of these signs in yourself or someone you care about, the most important thing is not to panic, but also not to ignore them. Subcortical vascular dementia is closely linked to vascular health. That means there are meaningful steps that can help protect brain function when changes are identified early. A thorough evaluation may include detailed cognitive testing and brain imaging. These tools help professionals understand whether changes in deep brain systems are contributing to the symptoms. If vascular-related cognitive changes are identified, addressing risk factors becomes essential. Supporting healthy blood pressure, stable blood sugar, balanced cholesterol levels, regular movement, and overall cardiovascular health can help slow further changes. While existing brain changes cannot be reversed, protecting the brain from additional stress can help preserve function and quality of life. Supportive strategies also matter. Physical therapy can improve movement safety. Structured routines can reduce cognitive load. Practical approaches can help manage attention, motivation, and daily organization. Most importantly, remember this: subcortical vascular dementia is not the same as other forms of cognitive decline. It is closely tied to circulation and vascular health. And when addressed early, progression can often be slowed significantly. Awareness is the first step. If this information helped you better understand what to watch for, consider sharing it with someone who may benefit. Early recognition allows families to ask better questions, seek appropriate evaluation, and take meaningful action. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of your brain. It supports everything you do.